Good morning. We're going to do one more day of some St. Patrick's Day fun. So let's start by punching the first sound of some of these St. Patrick's Day words. You know how to do this. You ready? March. Gold. G. Rainbow. End. Saint. Patrick. P. Shoe. Sh. Shamrock. Shh. Did you hear the shh at the beginning of those last two words? What two letters make the sh sound? That's right, S and H. When S and H are together, they say shh. Let's look at some words that have SH together, and you can help me read them. Make the SH sound together. Shh. P. Shop. I just changed the vowel. Ship. Ship. This time we have the long E sound. Sh. Eep. Sheep. Can you do this one? L. Shell. Remember the U sound. T. Shut. That's a popcorn word. You know that one. She. This one's a big word. It's a word we did yesterday, but you can do it. Just make each sound. SH goes together. Sh. K. Let's put it together. Shamrock. Shamrock. Now we have the SH sound at the end. Ish. Fish. Just change one letter. Ish. Wish. Ash. Cash. Change the C to an M. Ash. Mash. Rush. Hush. Good job. Remember, you can read a whole bunch of words if you just take your time and make every sound as you blend them together. Our story today is another St. Patrick's Day story about a leprechaun, and it's called Too Many Leprechauns, or How the Pot of Gold Got to the End of the Rainbow. Have you ever heard that the pot of gold can be found at the end of the rainbow? This story is going to tell us how that happened. And the author is Stephen Krinsky. What did Stephen Krinsky do? You're right, he wrote the story. And the illustrator is Dan Anderson. So what did Dan Anderson do? Did the pictures. Here we go. Too Many Leprechauns, or How the Pot of Gold Got to the End of the Rainbow, by Stephen Krinsky, illustrated by Dan Anderson. Finnegan looked like a rogue and walked like a rascal, so it was widely thought that he was at least one or the other, and his shadow, which followed him closely and knew all of his secrets, might have said he was both. But when Finn returned home to Dingle after a year in Dublin, he was only looking to rest his feet and grow fat on his mother's soda bread. The village looked much as he had left it, the stone walls a bit wobbly, the houses leaning into the wind, and yet something was clearly amiss. At his own house, Finn was surprised to find his mother cleaning up broken dishes with a broom. Mrs. O'Finnegan let out a great yawn. "Oh, so here you are, Finn, and it would be glorious to see you if only I could keep my eyes open. But the leprechauns are everywhere, making fairy shoes with that infernal tapping, and none of us have slept in weeks." At that moment, Finn heard a steady tap, 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 tap in the yard. He stepped outside to investigate. In the garden, a leprechaun named Dob was hard at work. Tap, 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 tap. "Good day," said Finn. Dob scowled at him. "It's a busy day, to be sure. The more shoes I make for the fairies, the more gold I get. And nothing is more important than gold." Now Finn had some experience with leprechauns, and he chose his words carefully. "A wise outlook. If I'm not mistaken, though, you may have missed a stitch." Dob dropped his hammer. "Missed a stitch?" He wagged a finger at Finn. "Fancy yourself an expert, do ya? Come with me." Dob led the way to a second leprechaun named Waddle. He, too, was making shoes, a dainty pair with silk flowers lining the sides. "What do you say to these?" asked Dob. "Has Wattle missed a stitch, too?" Finn rubbed his chin. "Well, his shoes are fine, assuming they'll only be worn in the dark." "In the dark?" cried Waddle. "Where no one could see them," Finn explained. Both leprechauns turned a deep shade of red. The next day, Dob dragged Finn to 3 more leprechauns, and to 4 more the day after that. By week's end, Finn had seen shoes of every size and style, and for every fault, flaw, and defect that he mentioned, the angrier the leprechauns became. "Leprechauns are sensitive," Finn observed to his mother. "And greedy, too," she added. "But don't put my heart crossways by taking too many chances." Then there was a knock at the door from Dob. "Ah, you're just in time for tea," said Finn. Dob snorted. "It's not tea I'm after. It's you. Follow me." Dob led the way to a field where all the leprechauns stood waiting. As Finn approached, they moved back slowly to reveal a great pile of gold. "We hardly could have gained all of this," said Dob, "if our shoes were not the finest in the land." "Impressive," said Finn. He could see that the leprechauns loved their gold dearly, so dearly that it just might be their undoing. "Perhaps," Finn went on, "if I saw all of your shoes together, I might change my mind." "Yes, yes, yes," the leprechauns agreed. They were sure that this would make all of the difference. "Tomorrow morning we will bring the shoes to the village square," they promised. Finn nodded. "I'll be counting on it," he said. A gray dawn greeted the leprechauns as they arrived with their carts, barrows, sacks, and bundles. The shoes were unpacked and laid out with care. Soon everything was ready. But while the leprechauns were there and the shoes were there, Finn was not. The leprechauns waited and waited. The sky cleared before Finn finally appeared. "Sorry I'm late," he said, although he didn't sound sorry at all. Finn marched up and down the street. At some shoes he stopped to point in astonishment. Ooh. At others he simply clapped in delight. "A very impressive sight," he said finally. "I can see why you were proud of your treasure." Dob frowned. "Were proud?" he repeated. "Are we not still proud of our gold?" "Well, you could be," said Finn, "if your gold hadn't suddenly disappeared." The leprechauns turned pale. Disappeared? Such a thing was beyond imagining. Still, it might be best to make sure. Empty. They found the field empty. "It must be here somewhere," Dob insisted. The leprechauns looked everywhere, behind hedges, under rocks, even in the trees. All night and into the dawn they searched through Dingle, their lanterns flickering like fireflies in the darkness. But it did them no good. All of their fairy gold, every last coin and nugget, was gone. In the morning, when the mist still lay heavy on the air, the leprechauns came pounding on Finn's door. "What have you done with our gold?" Dob demanded. Finn shrugged. "All is not lost, only safely tucked away. I'll make you a bargain. If you promise to leave Dingle and never trouble us again, I'll return your gold." It pained the leprechauns to admit defeat, but not as much as it would have hurt them to lose their gold forever. Reluctantly, they agreed to his terms. "Then we'd best be moving on," said Finn, looking up at the clear sky. He led them back to the empty field. At that moment, the sun came out, and a rainbow fell from the sky. And there, where the rainbow met the grass, a great pile of gold suddenly appeared. The leprechauns stamped their feet. "You moved our gold to the end of the rainbow, and when the rainbow vanished, so did our gold." "Indeed," said Finn, "for it is fairy gold, as you told me, and fairies often use rainbows to move their gold about." "You tricked us," said Dob. Finn held up a hand. "The rainbow is back, and so is your treasure. Take it in peace while the rainbow holds, and remember our bargain." Finn then went home to his mother, who, after a good night's sleep, baked him more loaves of soda bread than even he could eat. As for the leprechauns, they were heard grumbling at times about how Finn had outwitted them. Yet they were secretly pleased as well, for if the truth be told, they've kept their gold at the end of the rainbow ever since. Finn sure did trick them out of their gold, and now they say that's why the gold is at the end of the rainbow. I don't have any gold, but if I could trick a leprechaun out of his gold, what would I do with it? I might take a nice trip somewhere. What would you do? If you could trick a leprechaun out of all of his gold, what would you do with it? Well, I don't have gold today, but I do have some money. Money that you know about, like quarters, pennies, dimes, and nickels. Let's look a little bit more at reviewing what those coins are. What is that coin? It's a penny. How much is it worth? 1 cent. How can you tell it's a penny? You can tell because the color is brownish. You can tell because it has that man with the beard on the front. Do you remember who that is? That's right. That's Abraham Lincoln. What's on the back of the penny? The Lincoln Memorial. Penny is worth 1 cent. What is that coin? That's a quarter. How much is a quarter worth? 25 cents. How can you tell it's a quarter? Its color is different than the penny. It's silvery or gray. It's bigger. It's much bigger than the penny. Who's on the front of the quarter? George Washington, our first president. What's on the back of the quarter? An eagle. The quarter is worth 25 cents. What's that coin? It's a dime. How much is a dime worth? A dime is worth 10 cents. How can you tell it's a dime? Well, it's the smallest coin. Look how much smaller it is than the quarter and than the penny. It's silvery gray. Who is that on the front? President Roosevelt. What's on the back of the dime? It has the torch and the oak leaf and the olive branch. The dime is worth 10 cents. What's this coin? It's the one that the children in my class tend to mess up the most. That's right, it's the nickel. How much is a nickel worth? 5 cents. How can you tell it's a nickel? Yeah, it's silvery gray. It's bigger than the dime, but not as big as the quarter. Remember, the nickel is the one that when we feel it on the edge, it's smooth instead of bumpy. Who is that on the front of the nickel? That's Thomas Jefferson. And what's on the back of the nickel? It's Thomas Jefferson's home, Monticello. The nickel is worth 5 cents. Now your job today is to go through your house and see if you can find some coins, some pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters. Gather them up, and then with a grown-up or a big sister or brother, see if you can identify the name of each coin and what it's worth. Then for a challenge, see if you can start adding them together to find out how much money you've got. 2 nickels would be 10 cents. How much would 2 dimes be? How much would 5 pennies be? See if you can add it up and find out how much money you've got. In the info below, you'll also find the links to the Jack Hartman money songs that we love to do together. All right, happy hunting. Pretend you're hunting for gold, and I'll see you tomorrow.